hello, you guys from all over the world, and it's another episode of AYP Live. Welcome back. Hey, I have been totally enjoying reading your guys' comments on our recent videos with Bob, Dan, Sean Tucker, me. That's really awesome, and I'd love to hear you guys on our chat. Tell us where you're from. We want to get a kind of a roll call from all over the world. I really hope you guys are doing well. I want to kind of refresh those four things. I added one that I'll tell you about in a second to kind of help, keep your head straight during this really tough time period. So number one, if you can, I know some people in the world can't do this, but if you can, get out for a walk every day. Get your head out of, the bad news and what's going on. Put your attention out onto the world. This is really important. And as photographers, it's a vital thing. You've got to look all the time. And you can take your camera with you. That's cool. But don't go on your cell phone. Don't, you want to get off of devices, electronics, and just see what's going on out there. Take your walks. Do your journaling. Write down your thoughts, your goals, your aspirations, things you realize in the middle of the night, whatever it is. Get inspired, do something inspiring. Well, we're bringing you that inspiration, so that's really easy. And on another note on inspiration, watch the film that I released on Sunday if you haven't already seen it. It's a poem by a naturalist named John Muir. He's the one that basically helped save our national parks in California and actually all around the country, in the US and even around the world. And Jared will post the link to it. If you haven't seen that video, please watch it. Please share it. I really feel it's got an important message that we should all be looking at, which is essentially life has a cyclical pattern to it, cyclical like a cycle. There's sunrises, there's sunsets, there's beautiful times, there's bad times, but they keep cycling back. And that's what we're in the middle of right now. We are going to cycle back through this. So watch that film, leave me your comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to introduce you to our guest today. So Joshua Shultz is a photographer. He started out his career in photography naturally, taking photos of musicians, actors, models, anyone he could find. He's photographed for some pretty amazing publications: Rolling Stone, Elle, Bellus Magazine, Billboard, and now he's moving into the world of filmmaking. And he hopes to tell his unique and interesting stories, which is a theme for us on AYP Live, is telling stories with your camera. So, Joshua, welcome. It's really great to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
And you're in Hollywood. You told me you could see the Hollywood sign. How cool is that?
Yeah, right in front of me is the Hollywood sign, Griffith Observatory, and then right over here is downtown LA.
Okay, you're right in the thick of it. Good place to be, moving into filmmaking. So we're going to talk about photography. And one of the things you had mentioned, we were kind of chatting about this before we got started, is, debunking. There's a lot of incorrect data in the world, especially you dive into, and we do a lot of that already. The world of the internet, you don't know what you're bumping into, and there is incorrect data. So as we go through this, we're going to kind of strip away some of that stuff, not necessarily any specific question, but if it comes to mind, let's take a look at it. Great. So my first thing makes you want to go out and make a photograph.
Well, for me, it's I'm addicted to art, I guess, and for me, art, it's important for me to look at what I do and what things are into simple definitions. And for me, art is communication. So it's getting a communication across. And my inspiration is just life. Like anytime I look out the window, see beautiful view, light hitting a dirty street, watch people. I don't know why, but I get this fire inside me of just constant inspiration where I want to create. And for many years, I had this feeling, but I had discovered photography, so I didn't have an outlet to get that inspiration out through. And one day, I by accident discovered photography up in Big Sur, and it was like I won the lottery. All of a sudden, all of this life inspiration I now had a tool in which to utilize it through.
Big Sur, we were just talking about it. For those who don't know what Big Sur is, we should do a specific show just on Big Sur. Big Sur is a region. I'm in Carmel, California, right on the coast, and south of us, just really south of where my house is Big Sur. It's one of the most beautiful coastlines in the world. And some pretty famous artists have lived there. In fact, you were saying that you were there doing a shoot with the Beach Boys, which kind of blew my mind, at Al Jardine's house.
That was my first photo shoot. Actually, I think one of the photos I sent you was a photo of a band called Band of Horses.
Yeah.
And I remember because the 5D Mark II had just come out, and I knew nothing about photography. And this guy gave me a camera, and we walk into the Beach Boys studio, and Red Hot Chili Peppers was walking out. They just recorded their new album there.
Oh, and, that's amazing.
So I see Band of Horses and Al Jardine from the Beach Boys, and everywhere around is just Beach Boys, gold, platinum record, signed photos with, the Beatles, blah, blah, blah. And Al from the Beach Boys walks up and he goes, "Oh, is that the new Mark II? Can you tell me the difference between the Mark II and the first 5D?" And I didn't know anything, so I just started bullshitting him. And my friend saw that, so he took a picture of me bullshitting one of the Beach Boys about the camera. And then Al very quickly realized I had no idea what I was talking about and laughed. And
that's funny.
We became friends. But my first photo I ever took, I sent you, is the Band of Horses tuning their guitars in the Beach Boys studio in Big Sur. And I remember looking at that photo going, "Oh my God, what is this? What have I discovered? This is incredible."
So that was literally your first moment as a photographer, you shooting in the Beach Boys studio?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good starting point. That's not bad.
I spent 4 days there, and everyone that was with me was a master in their own field, and I was the only newbie. So one guy was Paul McCartney's photographer and director. Another one had just gotten off tour with Justin Bieber shooting his documentary, I forget what it's called. And they were like Emmy Award winning this and that. And then I was this guy who I knew I wanted to do something in art, but I didn't know exactly. And then somehow this magical thing came together and it lit a fire.
Bingo. That's pretty awesome. Well, let's talk about, since the fire has been lit for a while, if you can kind of condense like some of the key things that you use every time you pick up a camera, or even before you pick up a camera, your pre-visualization, your planning, all that kind of stuff. But what do you consider like the key points of photography that you use all the time?
Okay, so some of it might be a little bit hard to describe, but two of the most important things I do is I generally shoot with a feeling, an emotion, or a tone. So if I'm going into a shoot, I have a pretty good idea of the tone that I want to capture. And then I have this very stable policy that I follow. So when I first got into photography, I started shooting for me. I would see something and follow my integrity and go, "Wow, I really like this. I want to capture it this way and do this." And I'd release it. And all of a sudden, I don't think Instagram had been invented yet, but Facebook was around and it started spreading. And all of a sudden, celebrities would reach out to shoot, magazines would reach out to have me shoot for them. And then I met a photographer who might have had good intentions, but they gave me bad advice. And they basically were telling me to design my shoots around what I thought would be popular. And so I tried shooting with the idea of creating something that person would like, as opposed to what I would like.
Interesting.
And all of a sudden, my whole photography went stopped because I was no longer keeping my integrity in as an artist. I was trying to create something that I thought somebody else was needing and wanting, or what the world wanted, or whatever. And so then my career kind of like crashed for about a year. And then I spotted, oh, I lost my integrity as an artist, even though I want to create stuff that, you know, people enjoy. If I stick to only creating what my integrity or what I know that I love or what I want to do, then that tends to make the broadest reach for my art. So then I scrapped the old stuff and I just went back to, I'm going to go in with a tone that I like, but I'm still going to shoot and make what I know personally I would love. And then it took off again.
That is very powerful advice, you guys. You know, and I actually have used that as a kind of a tagline for advancing your photography, which is making photos that you love. Because if you love it, you are being true to yourself, and very likely other people will love it as well. But you're right. If you're kind of faking it all the time, and trying to create an image for somebody else, you know, where are you in that story, right? You've just kind of lost. I just want to do some shout outs. We have people showing up from all over the place. London, hello. I love London. I've spent a lot of time photographing there. San Diego, Phoenix. Jared, I see you posted the poem, which is awesome. Virginia, David is in Virginia. So keep telling us where you're from. You can line up your questions because we're going to take those in a little bit. But Joshua, any other points that you want to, you know, bring up? So you've got the capturing the emotion, basically being true to yourself. Any other, you know, when you walk in to photograph, what are you looking for? What is it that catches your eye?
Well, for me, the source of most of my photos has to do with my connection with the individual. So for me, the first thing I try to do is establish a communication line with the person. And I start communicating as much as I can and finding points that we have in common. And I tend to find that if I find a love or an affinity for the person that I'm working with, my art tends to get better. But if I'm working with somebody that I might not be very fond of, or they're being a jerk or whatever, my photos tend to almost shape to that, because how I shoot somebody is really how I see them. And a lot of it for me is, I have another big stable policy I have in my life is that there's beauty everywhere. You really just have to look. Like you could, you know, with the news, and the news is very great at reminding us how terrible everything is. If you really look at things, you can actually find that the world is filled with beauty. People are incredible, amazing people. Like they have these crazy hero stories inside of them, and it really takes looking. And that's my favorite thing about photography, is it forces you to look. So I go and I meet somebody, and by the time I'm done with the shoot, I've fallen in love with this individual, and then I create these amazing photos because we are kind of doing this dance together. So another policy is when I go in, I specifically am looking for things I like about the individual, and that will help me create beautiful photos of them, as opposed to what are you going to do for me, or you better be beautiful, or whatever the other flow is. It's more, what do I like about this person? And then all of a sudden it'll explode into this, wow, I like this, 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 and this. Let me capture that. I'm going to photograph this. Hey, let's try this. And then these sort of ballet dances happen between me and the subject. And then the photo is like a byproduct. Then you get these images from this experience you had with the individual.
You know, that's really well put. It is that connection, because photography is a communication means. It's a pretty phenomenal means of communicating, because, you know, you can post a photograph on Instagram and it goes around the world, or you put it in a book, it goes instantly around the world. There's no language barrier there. It doesn't matter what culture you're from. It doesn't matter gender, race, whatever, you're putting out a piece of communication. And that connection with your subject obviously is what's going to make or break that photograph. That's awesome. So, okay, good. So let me just mention we've got Indiana and India. Pretty cool. You guys, what time is it in India? You're up. You said you were staying up very late. Thank you. And Dublin, Sao Paulo, awesome. Josh and I are both surfers. I would love to come to your country and do some surfing there in Brazil. I've never been there, but I hear it's amazing. Dubai, Chicago, wow, pretty cool. David said the camera shoots both ways. Good comment. It does, and what you project out is what is going to happen at the other end as well. Okay, cool. So, Josh, are there any points? I mean, we kind of already touched on that, and maybe you've already answered this question, but getting that emotional impact. What is it? What's the secret sauce to, making a photograph that is going to impact somebody emotionally?
It's funny for me. It's one, the connection with the person, because as soon as I've established that trust, now I have them, and now I can start pulling stuff out of them that is art as opposed to just a technically good photo. And I feel like you can really see that in a photo. You can look at a photo and go, that's pretty, but I feel nothing. Or you can look at a photo and go, wow, I don't know what it is, but I can't stop looking at that photo. So once I build the trust, and the individual is posing for me and trying their best to look good, and they have their insecurities and they're thinking of their angles, and maybe I don't like my elbows or my neck, so they're trying to do that. And I let them do all that stuff, because if I try to stop them from doing that, it's gonna make the situation less organic. So they run through all their circuits and all their insecurities and stuff, and then I wait for that moment, because there's always going to be a moment where they kind of put their attention on something else, so they forget to be insecure, and then they relax for a second, and that's when I capture the photo, because that's when it's going to be the most genuine, then the most them, and not all these weird ideas of what is ugly about them or beautiful about them or whatever. But it's really just capturing them in their most organic state.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking before about various cameras, and Joshua shoots with a Hasselblad. I do too. And one of the things about this camera that I'm sure you utilize like I do, what I like about it is I'm looking down here. I don't have this thing right in front of my face, that's basically making a big disconnect between me and the subject. But there's also this other kind of trick, which is once I've basically framed my image, I don't have to keep looking down here anymore. I know what it's going to look like. So my attention is now just one person to another, looking straight at my subject. I'm sure you do that all the time. And you keep photographing. Like you said, they've got all their things and whatnot, but that helps break down that barrier, which is one of the advantages to this type of camera.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Very cool. All right, what we're going to do is have a look at some of your photos and just tell me the story, what happened, how you were shooting it. I'll bring these up here. Hopefully this works. It did work. Look at that. Okay. So the first one we've got is this beautiful redhead with the black hat on. Maybe you could just tell us what's going on here with this story. Let me get this. There we go. Okay. So you guys can see it there in TV land. All right. So tell us this story behind this photograph.
So that is an actress named Catherine McNamara. At the time, she had a TV show called Shadowhunters that she was the star of. And now she's on a show called Arrow. and we decided to shoot together. Mine has a restaurant in Silver Lake, and they said that I could shoot there. And so we brought some clothes, and that's actually my hat that she's wearing that I happen to be wearing.
Oh, cool.
And there's this little stairway that goes to an upstairs area, and I think they were thinking I was going to shoot in the big fancy first floor with all the fancy this and that. But I went to the second floor, and there's this interesting little glass sunlight, and the room was all painted blue. And I noticed the corner, like the whole room, just the light would come in and bounce off all the walls and create this beautiful soft light. And so I sat her behind a table and had her look up at the sunlight. And to me, it was so pure and beautiful. And at the time, her and I were actually cracking jokes to each other, so she was laughing. So we were having a lot of trouble getting a photo where she wasn't cracking up. And at that 1 second, she looked up, and I got that photo. And it was one of those moments, too, where everyone on set was looking at the camera like, oh, my God, this is amazing. Like, I love that feeling when you have people that believe in you as an artist, and they're on set, and they're working with you, and then they see a photo, and they just sort of nod like, this was a good decision to spend my day making art instead of doing something else. And anyway, and then I released it, and some magazines picked it up, and her fans really liked it. But for me, there was just something so happy about the memory of looking at that image. Like as a photographer, when you see an image, you look at it different than other people, because for you, it's attached to a story.
Exactly.
And so that was a happy story.
It's a gorgeous photograph. And so was that natural, all natural light?
All natural light.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really spectacular. Do you generally just work with natural light, or do you add lighting, or what's your your normal approach?
So when I started, I only did natural light, and I would only use one lens. And then, and that wasn't an art choice, that was just what I had.
Yeah.
And I only shot outdoors because I didn't have a studio. And then eventually, I got a sponsorship with Canon. And so I got all this new fun equipment. And so I started shooting with harsh flash, harsh light with, I really liked having my aperture 22, 23, whatever. And then I got a studio, and then I bought studio lights, and then I played around with that. And then it changed into a mix. Whatever I felt that day, it would be a flash, it'd be natural, it'd be studio. And then now it's all completely changed. Now my favorite is shooting only on film. And it was film with strobes, pro photo strobes, and then now it's film with natural light, because film records natural light better than anything else.
So true. Okay, well, let's look at another photograph. Let me switch over here. We all know who this is, David Hasselhoff. So what's the story behind this photo?
So that was a fun day.
Sorry, I'm switched. There we go. Okay. Go ahead.
So I was hanging out with David and his daughter. We were shooting a reality show for E! At the time. And then one day we decided to drive to the beach. And so David had us go meet some of the cast, the original cast of Baywatch. We met on the original set on the beach. So there's actually another cast member kind of off to the side. And this huge presidential helicopter was flying over the beach. And I think it was Obama was visiting. And it was one of his presidential helicopters. But they had two, I think, so you couldn't know which one he was in. And so David sort of walked up to look. And then I noticed him, like, very proudly looking. And I ran over and I was like, don't move. And again, I think he cracked a joke and I cracked a joke. And then I talked about being a hero or something. So he sort of put his chest out again. And then I took that shot. And to me, it was special because it wasn't just a photo of David Hasselhoff, but it was David Hasselhoff with the original cast of Baywatch on the original set of Baywatch as Obama was flying by.
That's pretty cool.
And then we went to a seafood restaurant right after, and everyone knew who he was, and we got free food. And he's just like a big kid. Everywhere he goes, he just makes everyone smile, you know?
Amazing. Okay, Josh, what time of day was this?
Sometime in the afternoon. I
Yeah.
want to say like around 2 or 3.
Okay, well, we're debunking. The only time you can shoot is in the golden hour, right? I mean, you're shooting it really in if it at 2 o'clock. That's pretty harsh sunlight right there.
Yeah, I love it. But also, if you're shooting with a harsh flash, it doesn't really matter what time of day you're shooting because you can kind of overpower to a certain degree bad lighting, because you're just flooding them with light.
Yeah. Did you use any reflectors or anything, or is that just
Nope, just camera and a flash.
okay? You did use a fill flash.
Oh yeah, so it's a camera and a flash. Yeah,
Amazing.
and
And what camera did you shoot that with?
I was a 1DX.
Okay,
Uh, yeah,
cool. Okay, let's look at another one here. So this is the ballerina, and she is. This looks like a negative to me, taken with film. What's the
yeah.
story here?
So I shot that on the Mamiya medium format film. Um, and that is a girl named Bridget. She's Andrea Bocelli's ballerina who tours with him. And we met, and it was one of my first film shoots. And I remember she came in, we met, we became friends. Now we're actually great friends. And I put on beautiful music and sort of set the tone in the room. And I talked about what fine art means to me and all this kind of stuff. And so we're all kind of in this wavelength together. And then she just started moving, and it was like everything we were doing was creating goosebumps. And then it was just up to me to capture it.
I love that. Everything was creating goosebumps. So you're just like probably with her as well, right? I mean, there's that connection going on.
Yeah. In fact, she
Fantastic.
just saw this photo 2 days ago, and she wants to blow it up and put it in her living room. So
Well, if
we're
it's
gonna
two and
work
a
on that.
quarter square, you've got plenty of range there to. What
Yeah.
film was that, by the way? I can see
Portra
some.
400.
Yeah, I can see some grain in there, which is beautiful. I mean, that's the cool thing about in digital we call it noise and it's kind of ugly, but in film, grain is actually adds to the beauty. It's part of the image.
Yeah, it's part of the art.
The other thing about film versus digital is every roll of film is a little different. Every developing batch of developer is a little different.
Yeah.
It's like it's not stamped out exactly the same way, just like a digital photograph. So you've always got that little je ne sais quoi of, what happened with that batch of film, what happened with the temperature and the development, and all those little nuances add up to the beauty of the photograph.
Yeah, and I love all that stuff. I also, not to get too much into film versus digital, but I think digital has its strong points and I think film has its strong points. And I don't think one is better than the other unless it's for a specific purpose. But I think if you're shooting fine art, film captures a physical thing in the universe onto a physical thing. And there's a certain emotion and tone that only film can produce that digital is trying to figure out. Where digital will capture, much sharper images, blah, blah, blah. If you're shooting a campaign or ad or model stuff, that's fine. But if you want to make a piece of art that someone could look at and feel an emotional connection to, and, it's in a museum for 100 years, I think the only way to do that is film. And it's also an educated guess. I had Hasselblad send me their top cameras, digital, and then I shot with film, and another friend of mine who's a fine artist, we went and did this test, and then we looked at both. We realize digital has its purpose, film has its purpose. And if you really understand the two, then, you shoot the right tool for the right job, then you're set.
I mean, that really is it. A camera is a tool, and yeah, you pick the right one. I mean, this is one of the themes too of advancing your photography, is not being obsessed with equipment, because that can just be an end point in itself. It's like, there's three zones of anything in life, but certainly with photography, composition and lighting and that sort of thing. And then there's why are you taking that photograph, which is actually that's like the bullseye. Like, that's the most important thing. Why are you capturing that photograph? And if you don't have that figured out, the other ones aren't going to work out either. I mean, just looking at what you shoot with all day long and what kind of equipment and what lens and what light and blah, 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 doesn't get you to the bullseye, right? You got to know why you're shooting, and once you know why, that's your vision. Once you know why you're shooting it, then you find the right tool for the job. It's that simple. Well, listen, this is awesome. Let's take some questions. Somebody asked, I love this. I love that you can see the ocean in his glasses. So that's talking about David again. Let me bring that back so we can see that. Here we go. Yes, you can see the reflection. You can see that in his glasses, which is cool. Somebody asked, did you use a polarizing filter?
No.
Okay. Well, that's quick answer. No polarizing filter. Okay. So let's see what other questions we have. You guys got any other questions? Now's your time. We've also got Albuquerque in New Mexico. Ronnie said there are 3 stories: your personal story based on your background, the story you're telling the viewer, and the story imposed by the viewer based on his or her experiences. Okay, that's interesting. Could very well be. All right, so you guys, if you don't have any other questions, I'm going to keep asking questions. So Joshua, one of the things I like to ask on this show is, who is your inspiration? What photographers have, or artists for that matter, or anyone, has inspired you in terms of your art?
It's funny because I get asked that, and maybe I should spend more time looking at the old greats, but my main inspiration is nature. Like, sometimes I drive to the mountains or to the beach or to the forest, and I just hike and I walk around. And I find that nature is probably the most beautiful thing, and just bounds of inspiration. Or it's life experiences, like getting around people that inspire me, hanging out with artists and just talking about art. That always like lights a fire, and then I have to go shoot. In fact, I have a photographer friend, and what we do is we push each other. So if he doesn't see new photos of mine within a week or two, he starts texting me, "Hey, what are you doing? What's going on? I haven't seen any art." And same with him. And then we'll talk like, "Oh, I tried to do this. I had this problem with this client. It was really negative, and I'm just feeling bummed out." And then he'll basically get me through that and get me back out there. And then he'll send me photos before they come out. And we just sort of bounce off each other. And it's healthy, because when I first got into photography, I felt like, I want to tell everyone about this. And I would meet a few photographers who weren't interested in being my friend or supporting me, or didn't want me to support them. And I thought that was so odd, because I feel like the world has a major lack of artists, and we need to inspire millions of more artists to fill this planet, and not, attack each other. And so eventually I started meeting other photographers who support each other. And that's really what we do, is we keep pushing each other to make art. And because of that push, I've learned a lot of truths to the art world, and learned, unfortunately, some major false things. And, we were able to kind of push each other around that. But But anyway, so a lot of my inspiration is nature and sometimes movies. Sometimes I'll watch a movie and see a story and it'll just
Yeah.
I'll think, oh man, that's such a great Western. Like I just watched Young Guns a couple days ago. Um, and now I want to go do a Western photo shoot. I just think that that'd be fun. Like get an old 60s film camera, get some real good costumes, go to an old ranch and just see what happens.
You know, it's funny because I just finished watching for the second time Western Stars, which is Bruce Springsteen's movie. And of
Oh,
course,
wow.
the whole, it's a fantastic film. I mean, very cinematographic. But it's his music, and he invented, or he wrote songs. He basically invented these characters that he was portraying in the movie and in the music. It's a pretty cool crossover, of genres in terms of, here are the songs he's performing, but he's also showing kind of like what these characters are like.
That's so
I
cool.
recommend it. But like you, I get inspired by movies also. Okay, we have
Oh
a
yeah.
couple more questions. So one is, did you start as a film photographer and then move to digital, or the other way around?
So I started doing digital. In fact, for the first year I started shooting, I didn't even own a camera. My best friend had just bought a camera, the 7D, but he never used it. He was an actor. He bought it to make self tapes, and I lived with him at the time, so I just kept stealing his camera. And then by the time I went to go buy a digital camera, I had gotten a sponsorship with Canon. So I actually don't own any digital cameras. They're all Canons. Uh, but after doing digital for a while, I discovered film. And for the most part, I was like, film is stupid. It costs a lot of money. You can't see the photo, blah, blah, blah. And I met another photographer who was shooting film, and he spent 2 months talking to me about film, having me look, sending me videos, and I got educated on it. And then I went and shot it. And then all of a sudden I had that moment of like, oh my God, nothing compares to this as an artist. And then I became obsessed and I bought, I think I have like 5 film cameras now. And I'm always at the lab getting it developed and testing new things. And seeing that film is becoming like a trend again is making me so happy because it's like trading in terms of art. Because again, digital has its purpose, but for me, film is like trading in a Ferrari for some cheap, ugly car. You know what I mean? Like there's just certain things that you can accomplish with film. And the old lenses they used on those old cameras,
They're incredible.
yeah, like the Hasselblad when they were doing the Zeiss, those lenses are just incredible. Or the Mamiya. I mean, they even take the Mamiya lenses off the cameras and turn them into movie cameras. Like the Joker, they shot with the old Mamiya lenses. Like, so there's just certain things that you might try to get with the digital that you can only get with that. But anyway, yeah. So I started digital, and then now I do film and digital.
Cool. Another question: what is your reasoning for using deep depth of field?
Um, for me, when I was studying film, back in the day, you had this film that required a lot of light in order to work. In the old movies, they would blast their subjects with this intense light so that the film could record it. And so, in a way, when you have the old film look or the old movies or these vintage things, I found out that their aperture was way different than what we do now, and so it gave it a certain feel. And so when I shoot a piece of art and my aperture is 20 or 11, it just makes me have this certain timeless art feel that I love. I mean, again, it's subjective, so that's my personal love. Where in a world where I went online and I saw a lot of people were trying to get as shallow depth of field as possible, and that was sort of a trendy thing, it made me different. And again, that serves its purpose, but I think if you understand why shallow depth of field is important, and why doing the opposite is important, then it just gives you more control over what you're trying to do. But yeah, so like for a while, my aperture was like at least 20, and I would take my flash. If you turn it sideways, and you set it on manual, it almost breaks the flash and it gives you an insane amount of light. I would be able to have my aperture there, and I pretty much always have my shutter the same. It's usually like 125. And that was my style for a while. But now that I'm getting into film, it's all changing. In fact, I'm working on a series, my first fine art series. It's all shot on film, and it's completely different than anything else I've shot. So at some point, I'll start releasing that. But yeah, that's why I did that.
Awesome.
In fact, at some point in the interview, I'd love to debunk some false information that I've noticed some photographers have had when it comes to Instagram and photography. But maybe we could do that.
Let's do it. Let's do it right now. It's perfect.
Okay, so this is something, it might be controversial, but to me, it's a very dangerous thing that's happening. So in photography, like we talked about before, you photograph for yourself with your integrity as an artist. And I find that tends to create the best photos. And I've had friends come and they want to get into photography, and then I tell them that, and they go out and they shoot for themselves, and they come back and their work is incredible. I mean, that's the thing too, as an artist, is like, I'll go out and try to do something, and here comes a guy a month into photography, and just because he's so pure and he doesn't think with all this other information, but they just go out and shoot for themselves, they come back and they create stuff that's genius. Now, Instagram is very dangerous in the sense that it's a tool that is used, it can be used to promote yourself as a photographer. You know, it's a great app for that. But there is this weird phenomenon that happens where you post incredible work and you get attention and you get likes and you get communication and you feel a sense of acknowledgement. And then over time, and I'm not saying this is everyone, but I've noticed it in photographers I've seen, they start changing their photography not to create art, but to get likes and more traffic on their Instagram. And so their art changes from beautiful work to photos that perform well on Instagram.
Yeah.
And the trick with that is it's stabbing an artist right in the heart. And I noticed that a fine art photo that I take that somebody will want to buy and hang in their house and spend all this money, or it could be, you know, somewhere important, won't perform well on Instagram. But a photo that performs well on Instagram, which is usually very sensational and very basic light that jumps out so that it grabs someone's attention, will never sell because it's not art. It's just a photo made for Instagram. And this, I think, is destroying so many photographers in the world. And for me, when I do a shoot now, I'll shoot something that I know is art, and then the same shoot, I'll then shoot some photos that'll do good on Instagram, and I know that they're different. And I think if you understand that, you can use that to your benefit, because obviously you need to market your work and get attention so that you make sales as an artist, but you need to not violate your integrity as an artist just to get attention on Instagram, because one day Instagram will be gone or it won't be relevant anymore, and you'll have all this work that was great for Instagram but isn't necessarily great as an artist. So I think as photographers, if we keep pumping out art that you love, that's your art, that's true to yourself, then that will have longevity. That will last for a long time, where sensational photos that are just good for some likes will eventually phase out. And I think that I could talk for hours about that, but that's something I think as an artist, as our responsibility. Don't post a photo just because you think, you know, more people are going to like it. Go and try to make the best piece of art that you love, and that will have longevity. It'll stand the test of time. When other gimmicks and marketing and trends fade away, that is something that will be true for, you know, hundreds of years.
Wow, that, you know, bingo. And that goes back to your point about your own personal integrity. You know, it's funny, we could play this out and imagine the great artists of all time, you know, first putting their stuff on Instagram. So here's Picasso, you know, when he's breaking out of all the, you know, the molds, and he's going into what ultimately just became his own genre. Of course, you know, at first it would probably not be liked at all because it isn't in the trend. So if he judged, you know, his whole career on, oh, they don't like it on Instagram, I'm not going to do that anymore. you know. There goes this.
How many fine artists would be gone? Yeah.
They'd be gone, because they'd be brokenhearted. But your advice is really a good point, which is know what it's for. It has its purpose, but stay within that and don't mix it into your purpose as an artist. It's a tool, right? It's a communication tool. And it's also, somebody meant disposable. It flashes by and it's gone, as opposed to a print that's going to go on the wall or go in a book that is timeless, as you said. That's really important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, any other kind of do you want to do any other debunking before we sign off? Any other key points that come to mind?
Well, you talked a little bit about what I call gearheads.
Yeah.
So I met people that are masters of the technical side of photography. They know everything about lighting. They know everything about cameras, and they do long videos about it. And those people are extremely important. But I think as an artist, that's a small percentage of what you should know. Like you should know your equipment to a certain degree, but that's just so that you know how to use your tool. But I think the number one most successful, important thing for all photographers is action. You should be shooting, because the best way you're going to understand your art, you understand who you are, what your style is, and create masterpieces if you're always shooting. So if you have a guy who spends, months talking about, well, the Sony's better than the Canon and blah, 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 it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You could shoot on anything, you know what I mean? As long as an artist, you're trying to communicate a message, you're trying to make art. But I think the most powerful secret to any artist is action. Always be shooting. Always be shooting. Doesn't matter if it's on whatever, but if you're just constantly making art, you're going to get better and better and better and better. And you're going to start beating all the other artists out there who aren't doing anything. Not that we should be competing with each other, because we should be supporting all artists to make art. But I think that instead of talking about for hours about why a sensor is different than this, that's fine. It's fine to understand your craft. But I think the most important thing is to always be out there creating art as much as possible.
Bingo. Wow, that's really good final advice. And Joshua, I really want to thank you for joining us. You're going to be back on this show again, for sure. In fact, we should do a live show when you come here to surf. We're both surfers. We discovered before the show we have a lot in common. We love Big Sur. We love surfing. We love photography. There's a lot in common here. But thank you again for joining us. You guys, okay, we talked about Instagram, but go ahead and definitely follow him on Instagram. Check out his work. This will all be in the show notes, so you can easily find it. There's a lot more comments. I will screenshot these for you, Joshua, and you can see the questions that people had, and you guys can, show up for the actual video, which will be up tomorrow, and ask any other questions. I'm sure Josh will, be happy to answer those. But thank you again, and look forward to our next show. But you guys stick around. I haven't finished. I got more to say to you. So that was really good. And, I got to tell you, every day I journal. I told you this. I do this. And, okay, take care, my friend. So this morning I realized something about this show, which is, we have a TV show here, guys. We've got a photography TV show. Although I'm thinking about titling it Creative TV, because it's more than just photography. And I actually have some guests that I'd like to bring on who aren't necessarily photographers, but can certainly talk about creativity. And that comes from my book, Create. But I want you to kind of think with this for me and help us be evangelists, get this word out that there is a pretty amazing TV show. Where else do you get to hear this kind of content and wake up your mind and get, inside? These are working photographers, These aren't people who are sitting at home thinking about photography or have read a book or whatever. These are working people that we're bringing onto the show. So I'd really love it if you guys help me spread the word. Tomorrow we have the most amazing photojournalist, one of the most, Ed Kashi, who is, if you haven't seen my videos with Ed, you should watch them, but definitely tune in tomorrow at 10 a.m. This guy is incredible. A lot of his work is war photography. It's not the easiest thing to look at, but it's telling a story for sure. So tune in tomorrow for Ed. Will you guys watch my video if you haven't and help give it some legs? Because I do believe that it's an important message. Jared, put that link back in here. Right as soon as we sign off, I want you guys to go watch it. And, like it, share it, leave your comments. It's an important message in today's world, what we're facing right now, which is something we've never faced in our history, where we're all faced with exactly the same thing in different ways, but we're also able to communicate globally about this, and we all have to make our way through this and somehow come out stronger, which is, to me, the message of that video. Okay, so I love you guys. Thank you for joining us. I wish I could answer every one of your questions. We will as we go along. Keep showing up. Tell your friends. Share the video. Like it. If you haven't already subscribed, do that. Follow me on Instagram. I do use Instagram too. It is a tool. And I don't put up necessarily my best fine art photography. I use it as a kind of a quick method of communicating what I'm thinking about or what I see, like a sketch pad almost. Okay, you guys, I don't think I've left anything out. If I have, we'll pick it up tomorrow. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Remember to get out and capture your own images of life. Love you guys. See you soon. I'm signing off. Here comes the card.